It's time for Reason.
They understand it's not going to happen right away. They understand, like they did during the FDR times, that you have to do it in a progression. So what do? You overcorrect. You create this movement of fringe socialist ideologues that are very crazy, that are very wild on the fringe. You make them look like crazies, and then you hold up an entire centrist movement, and you end up winning some Democratic seats.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Each and every day. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Can you believe it is a brand new week? It is the week before Election Day. This is the most important week that we could possibly have. Welcome into the Voice of Reason on a Monday morning, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV channel 2610. Good morning. Welcome aboard on a Monday morning. Oh, yeah. Kicking it off, setting the tone for not only today, but for the entire week. We are getting ready. 1 week away, baby, is the greatest day of the entire year for Election Day.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, we got a heck of a show for you today. If you listen to Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio on Sundays, he always talks about his monster broadcast on Sunday because it's so big, it's so many affiliates, it's such a great program. Today is kind of our monster broadcast. We have really a monster broadcast all week long. This is the week where we cram in as many candidates as we can possibly get. I know that there's been a lot of different elections in different districts that I have not talked about, that we have not covered. I will try my darndest. I will try my best to try and get as many of them on as we possibly can this week. This is the week that leads up to it. We try and wait, and we wait, and we wait, and then boom, election time hits. And we can extend it out earlier beforehand, but at the same time, people just aren't as engaged at that time yet. They don't want to hear about it being drawn out for an entire month and a half, and it's just too much. It's just too much. So this week is going to be the week, now that we are in election time, many people going and doing early voting as well. Many people waiting until Election Day on Tuesday. That's going to be me next week. I will be voting on Election Day. To me, there's just something special about it's like Christmas. And you can go and you can have your Christmas dinner with family beforehand, and you can open up your Christmas presents beforehand and the weekend before or the week before, and you can have the big dinner beforehand. But at the same time, there's something really special about just doing it on Christmas Day. The atmosphere, the energy, the excitement, the anticipation, it's just the waiting of it. And I'm one of those. I really love the anticipation of just waiting for Election Day on Election Day. So I will be voting next Tuesday, and we'll be going and doing that. But you can vote, do early voting this week as well. We'll get you, though, as many candidates on the air. And one thing that we will be focusing on this week will be judges. Now, we haven't talked about the judges' races too much. There are two divisions that are up for election this year, and it is extremely important. We talk about judicial activism. We talk about the judges following the rule of law, actually enforcing the law, not trying to make up the rules as they go along. Judges are one of the most important elections that we can, and we're not talking about the Supreme Court. We're talking about district judges in this area that when someone gets in trouble, they go to the judge and the judge decides their punishment. That is important. The way the rule of law is followed, because if you are not following the law, then the judge should be the one that actually enforces law and punishes you appropriately, instead of saying, you know what, you need to be rehabilitated. Instead, we're going to let you off scot-free, easy. We're going to let you off with just a little slap on there, whatever the case is. And I understand there are different circumstances, obviously, but this is extremely important. So we're going to be talking to many judges this week as well, going into the race. You've been hearing some of the ads here on KQAM, but I want to talk to them. I want to interview them. I want to talk to them about the importance of the races, about what they stand for, what the judges actually do, what their duties are, and how they affect the actual community. So that's going to be a really big conversation coming up this week as well. I want to hear from you today, though. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you have a certain race that you are extremely interested in or that you want to try and hear from the candidates, let me know. And let me know, by the way, as soon as you possibly can so we can have time to actually get them on. We are booked this entire week, but that's not to say that we can't try and fit them in different times throughout the show later on this week or Monday or Tuesday next week. I am still working on the montage that I will have for all the judges, all the governor's candidates, all the Secretary of State's candidates, all the House seats, and if we got both candidates on for that district, then we'll put them back to back, and we'll do those montages on Election Day Tuesday next week. So get ready for that. It's going to be kind of a special holiday-ish episode of the show on Tuesday next week when we play the montages of what these candidates stand for, what they believe in as you go to the voting booth. So that'll be really fun and exciting. Coming up on the show today, though, we have Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute. I thought it was really appropriate for him to come in the studio at 7 o'clock for about a half hour, 45 minutes, as we talk to him about the election coming up, about what's going on in the state as you make the decisions of who to vote for, of who to support, of what to support. The Kansas Policy Institute that looks at the budget, that looks at the numbers, looks at tax rates, look at spending costs. They're the ones that can actually, I don't know if they do endorsements or not, but they're going to be doing a lot of discussion on what type of agenda we need to advocate for, and then we can listen to the candidates and see if they actually advocate for that type of agenda. So Dave Trabert coming up at 7 o'clock today from Kansas Policy Institute. Plus in the 8 o'clock hour number 3, Will Carpenter, District number 75, one of the hotly contested races, the incumbent Mary Martha Good, that is her district, and Will Carpenter is the Republican challenger for the primary. We'll be talking to him at 8 o'clock today, so looking forward to that one. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Weekend recap. Hope everybody did have a great weekend. It was a lot of fun. I tell you what, yesterday, I had never been. We had been wanting to go, but we have never been as a family. We have never been to the Exploration Place here in town. Never been. I had always heard it's kind of the reminder of, like in Denver, they had the Natural Nature and Science Museum, and you could see the space exhibit, and you could see the ancient Egyptian exhibit when it was touring there, and it was science, and it was history, and it was fun. It was really cool. I had never been to the Exploration Place. Now, there's my wife, and there's my child. And we got the invite. We heard about the Kansans for Life event last night. It's, what was it, at 5:30 last night, yesterday afternoon, at the Exploration Place. And we thought we'd go and support Kansans for Life and support their movement and go check out the Exploration Place. Let me tell you something. That was one of the best turnouts that I had ever seen. They were anticipating close to 3,000 people yesterday. We got there. The line was out the door. I don't know how they did it, but they fed all 3,000 people with pizza there. I don't know how they got to. I've never seen so many pizza boxes in my entire life. And it was open until 9 o'clock last night for the Kansans for Life and to go and see the event and go support them and go and check out the Exploration Place. And there were kids running around everywhere, and there were tons of families. It was so good to see. My wife was laughing. She's like, Andy, you were looking around everywhere. Were you looking for somebody? Were you checking things out? What were you doing? And it was just so mind-boggling. It was so cool to see so many families support such a great cause like Kansans for Life and support the movement, support the idea, support that cause, and so many families, just seeing the happy families together. It really made me warm and cozy inside and warm and fuzzy, because just looking at all the kids running around and all the families that were having newborn babies and all the young ones that were running around so excited to play in the little play areas there, and the grandparents that were there taking them as well that were running around with the little kid. I don't know. It was the coolest thing. It was the greatest experience that I got to see with all of these families and the happy-go-lucky thing that was going on yesterday. And then, of course, all the candidates were there, and to Congressman Ron Estes was there, said hi to him, and they had the booth for Kobach and Will Carpenter, and they had the booth for Governor Jeff Collier, and they had the booth for some of the judges and some of the House seats with Blake Carpenter and John Whitmer and Renee Erickson, and it was just a really great experience. And by the way, all the candidates, we do appreciate them very much so, supporting the movement of Kansans for Life and what they do. So it was a really great turnout. It was a really spectacular event. I'm glad that they got to do that. I hope that they really benefited from that, and that we can do another one like that again next year. Last year, if you remember, they had the picnic outside with the inflatable games and the inflatable jumping things, and all the kids enjoyed that. But this was really kind of a unique thing. So I hope it went really well for them. It looked like it to me, and it was just a really great event to just walk around and just stop and just kind of people watch and just observe all the happy families that are here. It really does show that there is a silent majority that when they show up for the great causes. They understand the importance of what these causes actually are for. And I mean, I have a story that we'll talk about a little bit later with some of with our senators that are going to town hall meetings, and the outcry and the screaming and the panic that the progressives actually create because they want their agenda and they're not going to stop until they get it, when the majority of individuals don't want that type of agenda. They don't want it. They don't like it. They don't support it, and they're not going to support it. But yet we're considered the minority now. We're considered the side that doesn't have any support. Just watch. They keep saying that they're going to take over the House. They're going to take over the Senate. This blue wave's going to happen. I keep laughing. I keep saying it's not going to happen. All we have to do is show up. All we have to do is get excited. All we have to do is make our voice heard. And when we do that, no matter how much they scream, no matter how much they yell, it's not going to work. They cannot gain more votes. They cannot have a louder voice in the voting booth by yelling and screaming at town hall meetings. They will not have a louder voice by trying to abuse you, trying to threaten you, trying to attack you either on social media or because you were walking around in town with a Make America Great Again hat. They can yell and scream and cause as much issues as they want. They can protest all they want. That does not give them a single more vote in the voting booth. Just remember that. It may seem intimidating. It may seem like they're on the winning side. It may seem like they have the majority, or they may have the momentum, and they may have a little bit of momentum. But momentum does not do anything when it comes to number of people going to the voting booth and actually casting their ballot, and they do not have a single louder voice than you do at the voting booth as long as you show up and you actually make it happen. 316-721-8255, 18 minutes past the hour. We'll take a break. We got a lot to get to today between the governor's race and some of the special interests that are campaigning in the governor's race to the town hall meetings that our senators are having. I tell you what, those are the individuals we need to be putting pressure on when it comes to a lot of issues, from the expansion of Medicare, which they're pushing again, not the senators, but the constituents, some constituents of in the state of Kansas here, to the wall, to the farm bill. There are a lot of things, and I think our senators right now are the ones that we really need to focus on along with going into this election time. So we'll take a break. We'll cover a lot of that, plus our great guests coming up on the show today. And some of the governor's candidates, by the way, will be joining us again this week on the show. We do have Ken Seltzer locked in for 8 o'clock on Thursday. The Governor Jeff Collier, said they may chime in sometime this week for a last little reminder to get out the vote, along with Kris Kobach and Will Carpenter. May get them on this week as well, as a last little push, last little oomph to get going over the checkered line, over the finish line on Tuesday. Can you believe it? Tuesday next week. Election Day, greatest day of the entire year. This is The Voice of Reason on a monster broadcast Monday. Stay right here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
25 minutes past the hour. Happy Monday morning. Great to have you along today. Let's kick off a brand new week. Let's have a little fun doing the thing, advancing conservatism on a daily basis. That is the way we roll every single day, but especially on a Monday. It is the greatest day of the entire week. Welcome in. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. By the way, before we get into the local election stuff, I have to laugh. I don't know if you saw the story or not. This was reported, by the way, on Fox News. U.S. therapists see an increase in patients with Trump anxiety disorder. Oh, man. Trump anxiety disorder. Therapists say they've been a rise of anxiety stemming from the country's politics, and it's being called Trump anxiety disorder. The report from CBC News And Canada says that since President Trump was elected, mental health professionals in the United States have been seeing an increasing number of patients whose stress comes from politics. A prevalent symptom of the disorder is feeling though the world is going to end. And now, we're always called the crazy conservatives with the tinfoil hat wearing nutzos and conspiracy theorists, where we think Armageddon's coming and we're planning for like the zombie apocalypse, which prepare yourself. The zombie apocalypse will happen at some point. Get ready for it. It's whether or not you're prepared. And that's really what it comes down to. But now it is the other side of the aisle, and it makes sense. When you see the videos of someone who goes into a restaurant and rips the hat off somebody and pulls out their hair and yells at them and splashes a Coke in their face because they don't like them, when you see Antifa and these members that go out and just violently try to physically attack you, that is the emotional response of someone that's under a lot of stress and anxiety. It is under a lot of stress and anxiety, and they're distraught, and they don't know how to handle it. You notice that when you are under a lot of stress and anxiety, that you end up just reacting emotionally. You come home from a long day, you're grumpy, you're tired, you had a bad day at work, things are just not going right. You come home and then just something sets you off. The dog, I don't know, the dog ate the steak off your counter, which, the dog ate your steak off the counter, which is just, yeah. And then what do? You emotionally respond. Yeah. Radio edited words. Toss them outside for a little bit. You come home, you're all happy. Your kid, and this hasn't happened, thank God, yet, but you come home and the kid outside wants to help you wash the car and ends up like coloring on your car or something like that. It hurts just a little bit. After a bad day, you just emotionally respond. Send them to their room and make them clean their room for the 18th time. You get it. It's the emotional response. You start arguing with your spouse because you're just, for the sake of it, you're grumpy and you're tired and you just are running on emotion and adrenaline. You just do your thing. It's not right. That's just the way you do it. That is the anti-President Trump movement in a nutshell. They don't like the fact that President Trump is president, that he's doing what he's doing, that he's actually succeeding in doing it, and they want to respond appropriately, which is the emotional response. Now, we have been in the society as well that when things don't work out well, then we go to our therapist and we have to talk about it, which is why I am your political therapist, because when things don't go well, I get it. It's very stressful. We come here, we vent, we have a conversation, we talk about what's bothering us, and then we come up with a solution, because when you don't have a solution, it's even worse. Which is why, again, the Democrats are struggling so bad. They don't have any solutions. The economy just hit 4.1% GDP for the last quarter. That is really good news. They don't have a response for that other than saying we want to raise your taxes and spend more money, because we don't know how to respond to what's going on. Donald Trump's winning on immigration. Donald Trump's winning on national security. Donald Trump's winning on getting the jobs and the economy back together. We're winning doing these things. They don't want that to happen because they actually want to get, do well in the midterm election, but they don't know how to respond. So it is the Trump anxiety disorder. We don't like it. We don't have a solution, so we're going to emotionally respond. When they advocate for, pressuring all the administration people and run them out of town or run them out of the restaurants, the emotional response. You actually handle it better when you have a plan and a strategy and a goal, and that's something they don't have right now. And it feels kind of good as Republicans, doesn't it? Bottom of the hour news coming up. Lots more to get to. This is The Voice of Reason.
Your home for entertaining radio.
This is your fault, too, man. I keep missing Rush Limbaugh's morning update every morning because I'm listening to your show.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Good Monday morning to you. Kicking it off better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. Right here on The Voice of Reason. Getting you pumped up, getting you excited, hopefully getting you so enthralled that you just can't turn away, because you're enjoying it, or you're yelling at it, or some degree. I don't know what it. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. As we kick off a brand new Monday morning. So, you remember as a kid, maybe you were a pitcher, maybe you're in sports in some degree, you were a quarterback, you were a pitcher. Do you remember what they always used to teach you? They always used to teach you to, or maybe let's say not even a pitcher, maybe you were an outfielder or whatever, but you were batting. And the coach would have you in the batting cage, and he'd have the kids all around, and there'd be people moving around and people talking and other practices going on. And what would they always say? Keep your eye on the ball and focus. Don't worry about the distractions. Don't worry about the outside forces. Focus on your task at hand when you were playing sports. It doesn't matter what sport you were playing, whether it was baseball, whether you were a quarterback. You get into the pocket, you're looking around the field to be able to throw the ball, not quite sure who you're going to throw it to. You're looking for somebody that's open. You're looking for how the defense is actually trying to block and trying to stop you from throwing the ball to a certain individual or trying to intercept the ball when you do throw it. And you need to be in the zone, right? You got to be paying attention. That's what needs to happen in politics. That zone, that tunnel vision. We know the agenda that we're working towards. We know what we're supposed to be doing. We know what we need to complete or accomplish at the end of the day. It's whether we can actually make it or happen or not. And no matter what loud noises are happening around you, all of the different Antifa threats and messages that they send to you, all the different protesters, all the rabble-rousers, all the ones wanting to expand Medicare and Medicaid, all of them wanting universal health care, you wanting free college or wanting to raise your taxes, all of that garbage. We tune it out. We turn the levels down. You ever watch For Love of the Game? Watch that movie with Kevin Costner. He's a pitcher for the Detroit Tigers, and it's going into the World Series, and he's getting older. His shoulder hurts, and he goes into, I forget what he calls it, but he calls it the tunnel vision, to where all the noise goes away. It just, zoop, it's done. And he talks to himself, and he can talk to the batter, and he's trying to get right into the zone, trying to figure out exactly where he's going to throw the ball. And you're ever watching, if you haven't seen it, by the way, it's a really great movie, kind of a drama, chick flick thing, but it's a really good drama for a sports movie. But he does it. He turns it down. He zones out. Everything else is just a muffle. Everything else is just a distraction. This town hall meeting that Senator Jerry Moran went to over the weekend, Republican U.S. Senator Jerry Moran grappled with a vocal town hall audience eager for a single-payer national health care system and to share their frustration with leadership skills of President Donald J. Trump. Now, here's the question. Number one, why are you going to a town hall meeting for your senator and complaining about Donald Trump? Except for, of course, to say, why are you supporting a Donald Trump agenda? But to just sit there and complain about Donald Trump doesn't do any good. Shows, again, the frustration level and the anxiety that comes from the left side of the aisle. Senator Moran said spreading federal health care dollars over an expanded population could result in diminished access to care rural areas to the nation. He said investment in other reforms, including lowering pharmaceutical costs through greater reliance on general medicines, shrinking the bureaucracy of medical billing, and advancing treatment of chronic or deadly illnesses, had to be explored before plunging into a naturalized model like that of Canada. Quote, I'm not ready to sign up for Medicare for all. There are some of my colleagues who would say this could be handled by the free market. Of course, they don't like that. They're going to argue. And it got heated. And they started chanting, single payer, single payer, single payer. And it just got very vocal in the room. And again, I ask, who cares? Who cares? Now, look, as you're an elected official, and we've mentioned this before, but if you're an elected official, who do you represent? As a senator, or let's say even a House where you have a specific district. In the Senate, you kind of, represent everybody in the entire state to some degree. But in the districts, for a House seat, let's use that for an example. Congressman Ron Estes goes to a town hall meeting. Democrats and progressives show up and they start arguing and they start yelling and start chanting single payer and they start advocating for him to sign up for Medicare for all and expand these programs. Who does he represent? Does he represent every single individual in the district? He'd like to. At the end of the day, that's kind of the goal, is that I am your representative. I am your congressman. But at the same time, this is not a democracy. Just because you yell and get riled up does not mean that you have a louder voice than myself or anybody else that may be listening right now who understands that you're on the losing end. You're not going to have that majority. you're not going to have as loud of a voice as we are when we go to the voting booth. So at the end of the day, your agenda is going to fail. And you can yell and you can cry and you can scream and you can get it all worked up and you can have your anxiety, but it's not going to fix anything. It's a distraction. And I really encourage our elected officials to use that mentality of understanding that is nothing more than a distraction. Now, Pat Roberts and Jerry Moran, they are Republican. They haven't supported Medicaid expansion, and I appreciate that very much, or Medicare for all, or whatever they're advocating for now. It doesn't matter. Government health care, it's junk. It's garbage. We don't want it. But they haven't supported that, which I do appreciate very much, and we need to thank them for that. Once in a while, having a positive phone call goes a long way. Because usually they only hear about negative phone calls. But at the same time, we need to have a more fiery, again, and I've mentioned this before, I know I have, but a fiery conversation of saying, no, not only am I never going to support it, it is a really bad idea, it is unconstitutional, and I'm not going to advocate for something like this in any way, shape, or form. It's not going to happen. So when we talk about the argument, the fiery, worked up crowd, it doesn't matter. Distractions. Tune them out. What I'd like to see Jerry Moran do is actually come out and say, you know what? No, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to advocate for it. I do support Donald Trump. And as he says, I'm not ready to sign up for Medicare for all. Say, I'm never ready. It will never happen, and you will never have my vote on Medicare for all. Sorry. Good luck with that. We're going to privatize. We're going to move forward. Do you realize how much it would cost? They just did a study, actually, at the federal level on how much it would cost for the government to actually advocate for Medicare for all and for a government-run healthcare system. Medicare for all, according to the latest study by this and reported by the Associated Press, $32.6 trillion. $32.6 trillion for a Medicare for all program. Now, if we have a $22 trillion debt right now, $22 trillion in debt at the federal level that we can't afford, we don't have the money to pay with. That's our outstanding bills as a nation. We want to increase spending more than the debt that we have as a total of a nation in order to have free health care for everybody. That's not really free because you don't have any free things in life, and it would be crazy amount of taxes in order to pay for something like this. But we would want to spend more money than what we have as a total national debt. That is $22+ trillion right now, and they want to spend $32.6 trillion. That is the dumbest, most ridiculous, most absurd thing I have ever heard in my entire life. The Bernie Sanders Medicare for All plan would increase government health care spending by $32.6 trillion over 10 years, according to a study by the university-based Libertarian Policy Center. That's, by the way, trillion with a T. The latest plan for the Vermont Independent would require a historic tax increase as government replaces what employers and consumers now pay for health care, according to the analysis released on Monday by the Mercatus Center of Georgia Mason University in Virginia. We would take their idea is we take all the money that we're paying into health insurance plans and apply it towards the government, give it to the government, and then they can provide us the service. Do you really think that's going to happen? $32.6 trillion. Now, let's take example as well with the statewide levels when we tried to expand Medicaid. And if you remember, the majority of the states, when they expanded Medicaid, their bill ended up being close to 300% to 400% more than what they had anticipated. If we expanded here in the state of Kansas, they're saying it's going to be close to like $800 million. It's really going to be closer to like $2 billion with a B in order for us to fund a Medicaid expansion program in the state of Kansas that many candidates right now running for office are advocating for. How are we going to afford that? Oh, let's raise our state taxes, right? Because right now we're already in a debt. We're already in the negative for our 2-year budget by 2020. Doesn't really matter. I know we throw a lot of numbers out on the show, and I try and, give the actual example and the facts and the statistics. But at the same time, for us to actually understand this, we need to have the emotional argument behind this. Let's put it this way. You're in your personal budget. You have a car payment right now that's $300 a month. You already can barely afford that $300 a month plan just to pay for your car because you have this very large mortgage on your car. You turn around and instead of saying, you know what, we're going to consolidate that a little bit, you turn around and you say, no, I'm actually going to get a bigger car and I'm now going to spend $2,000 a month on my monthly car budget, even though I can't afford my $800 a month plan. But now I'm going to spend $2,000. Where are you going to get that money? I don't know. That's a lot of money. That's more than most people's mortgages. That's more than most people's student loan payments. That's more than anything. That'll be your largest bill on the slate, and we're going to just put it on there. Why the hell not? Let's expand it because we got to drive in luxury, right? Except for in this situation with a $32.6 trillion plan, or even the expansion of Medicaid here in the state of Kansas, we would be tripling or doubling at least our budget for healthcare programs, and it would be for getting the beat-up podunk two-toner car that doesn't start half the time because of the quality of the healthcare plan. That's what we're talking about. Now, I know it's Monday, and I know that it's really difficult to wake up and try and get going this morning, but someone please explain to me why that's a good idea. $32.6 trillion. Historic tax increases. That is the Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez plan to actually advocate for this. If you remember, Elizabeth Warren came out last week and said that we need to have 50% plus tax rates in the country. Everybody needs to be paying into the government. Everybody needs to be moving forward with this agenda because that's just the way it needs to work. Government needs to be working this way. Government needs to be having your paycheck. They're coming out of the shadows. They've hid for too long. They're getting antsy. They feel like they're getting excited. They feel like they're getting a movement, and they are now openly advocating for their absurd ideas, ideology, philosophy to completely destroy this nation. I've never seen this before. They're now openly advocating for this, and they've come out with an actual plan. If you remember, Alexandria, she did an interview a week or two ago, and they asked her, how are you going to pay for all these free things? Well, I'm going to have to raise some taxes. And they kind of shy away from it. They understand you and I don't want our taxes raised. You and I like to have our money in our pocket. They are having a hard time campaigning on that platform. And with the economy at over 4% growth for the last quarter, with more people back to work than we've seen in a really, really long time, they don't know how to come out and say, yeah, we kind of want to take all of that away from you and actually increase government again and try and kill off all the growth that we're seeing, because that would be the way for the nation to go, right? They're bold, but they're stupid. And it's fun to watch, but we need to be aware of it because more people are actually signing up for this type of mentality, and that could be potentially very dangerous for us in the near future. 49 minutes past the hour. Take a break, wrap up hour number one. We'll get your thoughts and calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
6 minutes to the top of the hour. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Making it happen today, doing the thing, advancing conservatism every single day. That's the way we roll right here, having more fun than what we should be. 316-721-8255. The New York Times comes out with a story how Trump lost re-election in 2020. A sneak peek at the Times' new analysis from November 4th, 2020. This would be the same people that anticipated Donald Trump to have a 2% chance of winning on Election Day, right? This would be the same left-wing organization that tried to say Donald Trump had zero chance of winning going into the general election, right? But now we can see into the future, my friends. We can see into the future. We see our crystal balls, and this is what we see of Donald Trump losing the 2020 election. I find that quite ironic. 316-721-8255. The ACLU has been, I've never seen the ACLU actually campaign as much as I have in the primaries this year in the state of Kansas. I didn't know that they did campaign in primaries. I didn't realize that they were so adamant about having or not having certain candidates in certain seats. And I find it quite hysterical that the ACLU has come out in extreme opposition against Kris Kobach, which, I mean, it makes sense against him, because they don't like Kris Kobach in the first place. But the fact that they've openly advocated for the promotion of a certain candidate, which would be Governor Jeff Collier, I don't know why. Maybe just because he's the incumbent and he is just a nice-go-lucky, happy-go-lucky kind of guy. I mean, I like Governor Jeff Collier. He's a nice guy. But they are advocating for him. Now, of course, this would be the same thing as like the left-wing media is when they try and hype up a certain Republican candidate in the primary to try and get that candidate, and then they trash him and abuse him or her come the general election, because that's just the way the mainstream media works and the left-wing progressives actually work. It's really no surprise. If you remember 2008, during the presidential election, John McCain. John McCain is the staunch conservative. John McCain works with everybody. John McCain works bipartisanly. John McCain is the greatest guy to be able to work across the aisle and make everything happen. He's great to rally the base. He's great to rally independents. He's great to rally moderate Democrats and Republicans. He's going to be the guy. He is the greatest thing on the face of the earth. That's what they did with John McCain back in 2008. Then we go into the general election. John McCain is no different than George W. Bush. John McCain is a terrible, horrible human being. John McCain, there's no reason why John McCain in any way, shape, or form should be president, because he's just going to destroy this country. He is just another little Nazi, and he's a yada. That's what they went off on with John McCain. Mitt Romney, 2012. Mitt Romney is a moderate. Mitt Romney's going to appeal to everybody. Mitt Romney has some conservative values. Mitt Romney's going to do wonderful things. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. In the primary, come general election, Mitt Romney is a terrible guy. I don't know why they're supporting him, why they'd even try and rally around him. He did the same thing with his health care system in Massachusetts as Barack Obama did at the federal level. There's no reason why Republicans need to have Mitt Romney. This is Governor Jeff Collier right now with the ACLU. This is the reason that the ACLU is going so badly against Kris Kobach and trying to hype up somebody because he's an incumbent. He's got the best chance of beating Kris Kobach right now just from the internal polling that we've been able to see, and that's kind of floating around, and they don't want Kris Kobach to get that Republican nomination. Now, if Governor Jeff Collier, let's say that he gets the nomination in the primary race, what's the ACLU going to do? After hyping him up, after trashing Kris Kobach, what are they going to do? They're going to come out with either Laura Kelly or Josh Schwady, whichever one gets the Democratic nomination. And oh, look at this. They are the best ones to fight for liberty. They're the best ones to be able to fight for individualism. They are the ones that fought to try and keep families together from the border. They're the ones that tried to stop Kris Kobach's voter registration IDs and yada, 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 yada. And look at this. The Democrats going to be the one to go. Governor Jeff Collier is nothing more than another brownbacker. You know it's coming. You know it's coming. According to USNews.com, the ACLU attacks may actually help Kris Kobach win the nomination for the governorship. Why? Because conservatives already don't like the ACLU. When you have that much of a strong enemy trying to attack one of the people on your side, that usually helps your side rally around that person in order to defeat that opposition. Just saying, they try and do something productive and it actually does more harm than good for them. So I say good for them. Let them keep at it. Hour number 2, The Voice of Reason, coming up. Stay here.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
They understand it's not going to happen right away. They understand, like they did during the FDR times, that you have to do it in a progression. So what do? You overcorrect. You create this movement of fringe socialist ideologues that are very crazy, that are very wild on the fringe. You make them look like crazies, and then you hold up an entire centrist movement, and you end up winning some Democratic seats.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas. On the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 of the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good morning. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you along today on a Monday. Oh, yeah. We're setting the tone. We're getting you pumped up. We're getting you excited. Ready for not only for today, but for the greatest week of the year, which is, of course, election week right here in Kansas.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
There it is, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, a big show today. We're calling it our Monster Monday broadcast. Why? Well, because, hey, we're kicking off election week the best way we know how to do so. We're going to be cramming so many candidates on this week, your head's going to spin. Be taking notes. Now, there's a few things that I will be doing this week. Is number one, I will be making the montage of all the candidates that we've talked to, and I will be playing that again on Election Day. All the gubernatorial candidates, all the Secretary of State candidates, all the House races, all the judge races, all of those we will be collaging together, making a big old montage, and we'll be playing that on Election Day so you, the listener, the constituent, the voter, has an opportunity to listen to them again, understand exactly what they stand for, exactly what they advocate for, and take that to the voting booth. Also, this week, it is open, even though we may not have a candidate scheduled as of yet. If you want a certain candidate on the show, let me know which race is important to you. We've tried to focus on some of the hotly contested races of the area, and there's a few that I haven't even got to yet that we'll try and get to. Let me know which candidate it is. We will reach out, try and get them on the show. They can also just call in, because this week is kind of the open forum of, hey, get out the vote. This is really important, and we need to do that. So there's going to be a lot of fun stuff happening this week. But aside from that as well, it's about the issues, not just about the candidate, but the issue to understand why it's important to support one candidate or another. And one group that's done such a good job with understanding what the issues are, the real issues, how to fight for those issues, and then we can take that information and go to the candidates and ask them about it, to talk to them, advocate for it, push it in their face, and make them support that sort of thing. What did Maxine Waters says? Get in their face, do the thing. Yeah, maybe that's what we need to do with our candidates. Not advocating for violence or running them out of restaurants. Just politely ask them numerous times until they agree with it. But with us in here, I'm really excited to have him in from the Kansas Policy Institute. Dave Trabert back with us. Dave, how are you, my friend?
Good morning, Andy. Good to be here.
Well, it's great to have you back. What do you think? We should get out there and be like, hey, you need to raise your Feedom Index Score up a little bit there, pal. I think we need to be doing this.
People definitely need to be challenging those who come to them asking for their vote. Mm-hmm. It's sad that in most cases you cannot trust what someone says. Sometimes they aren't telling you the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say.
Sure.
Sometimes they don't know the rest of the story.
Sure.
It just all sounds good.
It sounds so
sometimes
wonderful.
You just have to learn how to how to ask those questions. And if you don't get a straight answer, then you can learn from that.
Sure, exactly. Well, I've noticed that so many, especially if they're on the looser end of conservatism, maybe on the Democrat side, maybe the moderate Republican side, whatever it may be, that it's an emotional argument. It's not one that's based on the actual numbers or based on the facts that you guys come out with. It's it really feels good. Children need more money. It's about the children, right?
Yeah, and if it is, whether it's children or healthcare or whatever, let's go back. What is it you're really trying to accomplish? You were talking earlier about Medicaid for all.
Sure.
Okay, so is that what you want, or are you trying to get health? You're trying to get health care. You're trying to get better access to health care, more affordable, better access, right? So you're in favor then of any way to do it, because there's ways you can do it.
Sure. Without
going to the socialist way. That doesn't work.
Well, without a $33 trillion budget.
What you find out pretty quickly is, no, I want that.
Yeah.
It's not really about what they say it's about. It's about wanting the government control. And sadly, what's behind a lot of this is, and you heard it exactly in what you were talking in the last half hour with some of these discussions about Medicaid for all, they think government's smarter than the rest of us.
It's true.
I mean, I've heard it from teacher union officials saying, well, you can't put teachers in charge of their own retirement. They're not smart enough to know how to invest their money. They need us protecting them and showing them how to do it. So that's why this program is better than that one. It's rarely about what's on the surface of why you should vote for me.
It is, they want their hands held. And they want someone to just take care of them, which is really sad. We like our independence on our side.
And just to be clear, Andy, this isn't about just criticism of the whatever they call themselves, the Democratic Socialists or the moderates or whatever. People who call themselves conservatives do it too.
Sure.
It's sad how many times some folks just don't have the facts. They might have good intentions. They might have great preferences, but they don't have the facts. They don't know how it can be done. That was one of the great failings of Governor Brownback's tax plan. It wasn't that cutting taxes doesn't work. Of course it works. It's letting us keep more of our money and causing government to be more efficient. They didn't have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they knew what needed to be done. They didn't have a plan of how to go about it, and then they didn't have the political will to force the changes that were needed. It's not you have to learn how to
minor
answer
details.
Just little
minor
details.
Little
know,
details. How you actually do
right.
what you want to do. Minor details. Don't worry about that. There has been, when it comes to the budget and some of the actual facts and the statistics, a lot of things have been happening. Number one, of course, we saw the Supreme Court come out and say, well, the formula is correct now, but now we need to talk about inflation. Is this going to be an annual new argument of them saying, well, this is the new way to advocate for more money? Is inflation. It's went up 2-3%. We better have more money going in 2-3% every year for education, or else we'll go back into the threats of shutting down the schools. Is that what's going to happen?
This will never end until the Constitution is changed so that it is clear that courts cannot order funding levels. It will never change. They've already left the trapdoor open for the next round. In this decision, they passed on whether the West Ed cost study asking for $2 billion was to be looked at. We're not going at that because they're just looking at, they have an excuse for not, that's code for it's still out there.
Still
and
there.
as soon as schools feel there's an opening in the next few years to go sue for another $1 billion, they will. And none of it is going to help the kids. We've increased our spending by $3 billion on schools since 1998. Reading proficiency went from 35% to 37% in 20 years.
Well, we should have another $3 billion.
Yeah, because it's all about the adults,
Exactly.
That's true. What it's about.
I mean, how we just saw the story. What was it? Olathe schools just came out. How much of an increase did they do for their superintendent?
Oh, yeah. Well, the increase, John Allison, the former superintendent of Wichita, got a 6% increase over what the previous interim superintendent was making, but it was $40,000 more than what he was making to run the state's largest district.
Sure.
He's taken on a district that's about half the size, and he got a $40,000 pay increase. Interestingly, we've also published the payroll for the Wichita schools, and the new superintendent in Wichita, who had never been a superintendent before to my knowledge, she's making more than John Allison was making as an experienced superintendent.
Ballpark salary figure, what's that look like?
She took in $271,000, all pay. See, this is one of the games they play. They only talk about the salary. When we publish the data on kansasopengov.org, it's all compensation, not benefits. That's on top.
Sure.
But whether it's salary, overtime, bonus, stipend, there's games like, oh, you're not taking our insurance because your wife works in the district and gets the insurance. Here's an extra $20,000.
Oh, sure.
That wasn't in Wichita, by the way. That was one of those big Johnson County districts. But so we look at all compensation. And yeah, we saw in the case of Olathe, and this goes to the heart of why kids are always on the short end. The kids, it's never about the kids. That's just they're the cannon fodder.
Oh, sure.
They're out in front. Look, you have to do it for them. They say, look, if you give us all this money, well, we're going to go hire more counselors and psychologists, and we need this money to close achievement gaps. Then you go look at who they hire and where the money goes. They had a $16 million increase in their payroll in Olathe last year, and virtually none of it, tiny amount, went for the things that would actually close achievement gaps. Potentially, not guaranteed, potentially.
Sure. I really think that a successful school district is one that has a bistro in there for the administrators. That's what I'm thinking. Or where the kids need to have an AstroTurf practice football field. That's where the money really needs to be going, and that will prove that the education system will be succeeding and kids will do really well on their test scores and graduation rates if they have a bistro for the administrators. So that the administrators really need to be happy and healthy and really need to be taken care of in that sense, right?
Until legislators get a backbone and are willing to stand up to the education lobby, the unions, the superintendents, most media, for example,
Sure.
This isn't going to change. They refuse to hold schools accountable. Can you imagine having no speed limit on Kellogg and saying we could have every radio host and TV host in the city saying, now slow down. We want you to slow down. You know what would be going on out there without a speed limit.
Sure.
There's no accountability.
Sure.
Legislators refuse to hold schools accountable for improving outcomes. And what happens then is when outcomes don't improve, then the fact that outcomes didn't improve becomes their basis for saying we need more money.
Sure. Now, Governor Jeff Collier, when they signed the last education bill this last session, said that there were standards and requirements put into that bill, and he was proud of that. And he said that when they came back, he said that, well, at least we fixed this, and there will be standards. Now, number one, now we're happy that the schools aren't going to close. We can then address the inflation rate or whatever the case is, but at least the standards are there. And Governor Collier was proud of that. Is that the case?
Not really.
Not really.
No, sadly. Did they put some things in? Sure. Those are more preferences. It's not accountability if you don't do what you're supposed to and nothing happens.
Sure.
So, the theoretical accountability of if you lose accreditation, you have to, appear before a legislative committee. Wow, that scares me. What happens in the legislative committee? You go in there and say, well, gee, we tried, we didn't have this, there's this excuse, there's that, of course, we always need more money. And there's a lot of legislators whose primary focus is getting elected sitting there saying, well, yeah, I understand. There is nothing there. And oh, by the way, they don't have any threat of losing their accreditation anymore because the State Board of Education doesn't accredit buildings any longer. They accredit entire districts.
Sure.
So it's infinitesimally more, I haven't had enough coffee. It is so much easier for bad apples to get covered up by a district when you're not accrediting buildings. And by the way, as bad as things are, ask the Department of Education the last time a building lost its accreditation. They can't remember.
Well,
these are hollow claims of accountability. Having to write reports saying our goal, laudable maybe, but our goal is to get to here, that's not accountability. Accountability is having the courage to say, if you don't do these things, we will make sure there will be a consequence to your district so that the kids can get the education they need. There is no backbone in Topeka to do that.
And that's what this election's all about. We got to take a break here real quick. 21 minutes past the hour. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute. When we come back, now you guys with the KPI don't do endorsements, but I do want to talk about some of the endorsements that have come out from like the Wichita Eagle, along with the Feedom Index Score that you guys do come out with that may help be able to set some people straight when it comes to the election. So we'll talk about some of that and more. Your thoughts and calls as well. It is a monster broadcast Monday morning right here on The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker KQAM.
Come over here.
26 minutes past the hour. We got about 4 minutes to the bottom of the hour news. Welcome in. Happy Monday morning to you. 316-721-8255. Hanging out with Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute for a little bit here. And we had mentioned, now you guys don't do endorsements. Nope, don't do any endorsements. But a lot of the endorsements are coming out. Of course, the NRA, Kansas, Americans for Prosperity. Do they do endorsements?
I don't know.
I haven't seen any yet. Have to look at that one. The Wichita Eagle making some endorsements as well. But what you guys do, I think is even more valuable than an actual endorsement, is the Feedom Index Score for incumbents with their voting record, what they've voted on, what they've supported. So that way, when you go to the voting booth, hopefully you're on the up and up enough to understand exactly what they've supported in the past. Talk about the Feedom Index Score a little bit. How do you guys grade that, and who's on that list on the top and bottoms?
Well, let's start with a commercial.
Okay.
KansasFreedomIndex.org.
There we go. Yes.
That's where you can find it. It's on our website. What we do is we look at every piece of legislation proposed to see if it has an impact on constitutional principles, which could be separation of powers, personal freedom, economic freedom, and so forth. Are you trying to reduce or increase taxes? Are you advancing or going backwards on student-focused education principles? And we have a criteria that's laid out on the website, and then grade each bill based on whether it's a really negative or a somewhat negative or really positive, somewhat positive. Sure. And then we just compare the votes. I mean, we don't know how the score is going to turn out until they push the magic button and everything flows through. It's all electronic. And just track everyone's score. And it's fascinating because when we started this, one of the reasons we wanted to do it was because we knew from being in the State House that what candidates say they support and what they actually vote for are often two dramatically different things.
Sure.
In fact, some of them will come back and lobby us in the hallway and say, look, I get it. I agree with you. But if I do that, I won't come back. And you need me to get elected to come back here and do the really hard, good stuff. And what that comes down to is you have preferences, not principles. And so, ironically, the most pushback we've gotten from people for publishing this are the ones who say, I'm conservative, you're making me look moderate.
Sure.
It's a way of comparing whether whether their actions match their rhetoric.
Sure. And that's really important. I mean, there are a lot of candidates in this election that claim to be conservative. I'm not saying a good, bad, indifferent one way or another here, but there are many candidates that have campaigned on the fact that they are very conservative, that they vote for lower taxes, they vote for limited government, but the Feedom Index Score and their voting record shows otherwise. And that type of information, to me, is more valuable to read through there and understand than an endorsement by which, I mean, endorsements are good. I mean, you get Kansans for life. You get, the NRA and the KSRA showing who they support based on their record of that sort. But this type of score is extremely important. We got to take a bottom of the hour break. But when we come back, I want to talk about your thoughts on the significance and importance of this race going into it, because we've had the response from the Brownback era and the tax increase from last year, and where we could go from here on out with education, with the tax rates, with government spending, and the detrimental impact, good or bad, that this election could have. So we'll talk about that when we come back.
We're going to talk about the tax increase from not just this year, but last year, this year, and next year.
And next year, exactly. Lots of that coming up here. Bottom of the hour news, your thoughts and calls as well on a Monday. This is The Voice of Reason.
And every step it makes us stronger every day. And if you're thinking
Waking up the right way.
I look forward to listening to you every morning when I get ready for work.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome into The Voice of Reason, doing the thing, having more fun than what we should be every single day, and we appreciate everybody tuning in, checking it out on Election Day. We love it. Not Election Day today, unless you do the early voting. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do. But Election Week, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing the montage of all the candidates on Tuesday. Also, I will be posting on social media, and we will read some of it on the air as well, the list of endorsements from different individuals, from the NRA endorsements, the Americans for Prosperity endorsements, if they do some, the Wichita Eagle endorsements. Yeah, that way you can know. 316-721-8255. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute, with us here for another segment. And Dave, I've been watching some of the campaign commercials on TV, and one of them, I guess I got to mention it, Laura Kelly, the Democrats running for the primary, made the comment that we need to stop the continued slashing of education funding in the state because of Brownback policies. We need to reinvest in education. We need to stop cutting spending for our children every year over year. That is in the ad. Now, as far as I'm remembering, we've talked about this before, the last I had heard, as you mentioned earlier in the show, that we've increased spending by $3 billion since like 1998. It's been roughly about a 2% growth of education every single year. Not to mention, I didn't even know that we could cut funding in the middle of litigation over the last 30, 40, 50 years for more funding for education. Does that make any sense to you?
No, but it's not about making sense. It's about getting votes.
Well, yeah.
No, funding had continued to set records. It's gone. Education funding has gone up and up and up. The last time it was cut was, I think, 2011, and it was by less than 0.5%. It was coming out of the recession, but it's been setting new records since then. It's just a shame that people make those claims. You know, but basically when government says they're getting a cut, it means they didn't get as much of an increase as they wanted.
Exactly.
So you could say let's say schools wanted a $2 billion increase and they got $1 billion. They'd call that a $1 billion cut.
That is a $1 billion cut. How dare that you cut the funding?
I wanted 2. You gave me 1. You cut my budget. That's just the way the game plays.
Mm-hmm. That is true. We do have a caller on the line if you want to put on some headphones here and get your thoughts. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK, line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning.
I'm well, thank you. Good show this morning, by the way.
Appreciate it.
I really liked your analogy about, and you just, I think, used it as an example, the Ron Estes town hall.
It was a Jerry Moran town hall, Senator Jerry Moran, yeah.
Oh, okay. And people yelling over other people, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of an idea about, say Jerry Moran, for example, polling all of his constituents on what they similar to an online interactive town hall that's always open.
Sure.
To where, sort of like, what do you call it? Referendum voting.
Okay.
But not really referendum voting, just, okay. Well, I'd like to talk about Ron Estes as an example, just because I know he has about 175,000 constituents, approximately. I'm not really sure. Somewhere in that range, maybe 150 to 200,000 constituents.
Well, he's got more than that. I mean, just the city limits of Wichita is close to 400,000 people, and he covers the whole south central Kansas area. So there's a lot of constituents that he represents for the 4th District.
Okay. Well, whatever that number is it beyond the realm of reason to believe that he couldn't poll each constituent on each issue that he's going to be voting on in Washington in the near future, and find out what each constituent thinks, so it avoids all that people trying to talk over one another, etc. Just throwing it out there,
That's an interesting concept. What do you think of that, Dave?
Well, it is interesting, and it makes there's certain matter of common sense to it. Unfortunately, you need to throw out common sense when you're talking about politics.
That is true.
I mean, because it presumes, if everybody was accurately informed on issues, then something like that might work. As long as you could get to critical mass and get a lot of opinions. Unfortunately, most people have not been given the opportunity to be fully informed on issues because they get misled by media claims.
Sure.
And that's why we have, in fact, there's the famous old story when they finished up in Philadelphia. Someone said, "Dr. Franklin, what have you given us?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it."
Yes,
because what you're the last thing you want is democracy. It's thrown around as, well, we have a democracy. No, we don't. We have a constitutional republic.
Exactly.
It's the rule of law. Democracy, another name for democracy is mob rule.
Sure. Exactly. And that's what we don't want. So now the idea, I like the idea, and I love the fact that there are elected officials that come back and talk to their constituents, have the town halls, get the feel for issues. But at the same time, having a vote like that, as you mentioned, not only is it concerning about some people that may not be informed about an issue, but at the same time, do we elect someone to based on their judgment to represent us in a republic, and we trust their judgment, which is why we elected them? Or do we do it in a more democratic fashion to where they go in there and then they just turn to us and say, okay, how do you want me to vote on this? And then I'll do it based on the democracy and the democratic vote that I have within my district. There's two totally different ways of actually how to govern in that sense.
If you had that type of, we're just going to poll people and find out what they want, then you're really ceding control to media.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it comes down. I'll give you a classic example. Okay, so here's the issue. Should we raise taxes to spend more money on schools?
No.
Okay, but if the public has been, well, Andy, you're not allowed to vote, see, because you're informed. But if the public has been inundated with stories from media saying schools only get $4,000 per pupil, some of them still say that. Some people I've heard run for office say school funding has been slashed. If that's what you're inundated with, then you're going to be much more likely to say, well, based on it's only this and it's been cut, I guess we should.
Mm-hmm.
But citizens have to work hard these days to get facts. And so, unfortunately, that laudable idea of let's just poll people and then we ought to know, well, it depends. Their opinion is only as valid as their education level on the issues. And that's not citizens' fault.
Sure.
That's the fault of politicians and media that refuse to tell the truth.
Sure. It's a great concept, and I appreciate the phone call very much so, and love the idea. Let's take another one here, shall we? 316-721-8255, line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, good morning. It's Deacon.
Deacon, what's happening, sir?
Brother, it is a beautiful day out here.
Living the dream every day.
Every day. I'm loving the show this morning, and I had a weekend conversation on Facebook with some teachers about the wasteful spending of the school systems in Kansas, and how they need more accountability for the money that they spend. And if you want to ever have a practice in futility, argue with a teacher about something that makes sense.
It's sad, isn't it?
I told him about the dumpsters full of school supplies that I saw. I'm a trash man. Thousands of dollars of school supplies in the dumpsters. And one of them was like, well, they're called consumables. Well, then consume the daggone things and don't throw them in the trash.
That is very true. And Dave, you want to elaborate on that? And again,
Sure.
Deacon, is a trash guy, which, he sees these things all the time. As we're talking about not having resources in the classroom, why would we see unused boxes of markers and dry erase markers in the trash at the end of the school year just because, hey, we need to buy new ones for next year?
Well, unfortunately, teachers, I talked a little bit earlier about the kids of the front line. That's the cannon fodder. Just give us, it's all for the kids. The kids get used. The teachers also get used.
Sure.
The teachers are at the mercy of what they've been told by superintendents. I mean, you get the Stockholm Syndrome. You've got the superintendent saying it, you got the principal saying it, you've got the media saying it, and it's, a teacher is dedicated to educating kids, and they can't envision not, having money and not spending it. So, I mean, to them, it's just, if they're telling me we don't have it and I'm seeing them cut this and cut that, because surely they wouldn't cut programs.
Of course not.
When they're hiring more managers, when they have cash, that's incomprehensible.
No.
It's, I understand that teachers have made some claims that may not be supported by facts, but they don't understand that.
Right.
Teachers really don't understand that. They have been used as much by administration and local school boards as the kids have.
It breaks my heart.
It is not. I'll tell you a classic example. I mean, a friend of mine, former Speaker of the House, Mike O'Neill, had a meeting with a superintendent in Hutchinson a few years ago, and they brought in a teacher, and they brought in some. He said, "Yeah, I'll meet with you, but I want you to bring a teacher in too." And the teacher comes in and she brings all her receipts from, this is how much I had to spend out of my pocket. And what are you going to do about this, Mr. Speaker? Mm-hmm. And he pulled out his report on cash reserves for the district and showed them how many millions were in the bank and had been increased over the last few years. He said they have the money. Of course you shouldn't be paying out of your pocket for this.
Right.
Submit your receipts. Well, they won't pay that. They say they don't have any money. Well, these are their records. They have the money. They're choosing not to spend it.
It is that
Teachers
important.
get used by administration.
It is that important for us to understand. We got about a minute left here before we got to go, but talk about the significance of this election when it comes to issues like this for education, when it comes to the issues like the tax increase that we saw before and we may potentially see again, when it comes to who's holding the dominant discussion in the legislature, potentially in the governorship as well. What's the significance and the importance of this election?
The future of the state. It's that serious. We are in our fourth consecutive decade of economic stagnation. The issues that existed before taxes were cut, and that didn't work out because, and we wrote a book about this, what was really the matter with the Kansas tax plan. Mm-hmm. And it laid out all the mistakes that were made. It wasn't the policy. It was the very poor implementation. Basically, a lot of it came down to failure to make government more efficient, not having a plan. All those conditions remain. We're in our fourth consecutive decade. There is no way that no government has ever taxed and spent its citizens to prosperity, and yet that is what we're setting up for. There's talk now about, the Wichita Eagle in one of their endorsements for governor made the false claim that tax cuts crippled the economy. That's just absurd.
We had a candidate say the same thing last week,
right
here on the air.
Based on what? First of all, is the economy sluggish? Yeah. That's like the wind blowing in Kansas, and it's been that way for 4 decades. We keep falling farther and farther behind. Credit downgrades? Yep, that existed before tax cuts. Mm-hmm. School lawsuits? Yep, that existed before tax cuts. All those things, those conditions all exist. We keep falling farther and farther behind. And all this spending that we're talking about, people are saying, well, we can keep increasing spending because, schools need it and so forth. And without a tax increase, that's farcical.
Sure.
We're working on research now, government data. First of all, you've already had tax increases. The House voted to give you another tax increase this year, over $100 million, because of the implications of what happened with the federal. You're losing your personal exemption because of the federal tax changes. That means you look at the government schedule. It's almost $150 million a year in new state revenue in the outlying years because of the federal reforms. That's a tax increase. That's already baked in. We're looking at, on top of that, probably another $1 billion to $1.5 billion tax increase in the outline in the next 4 or 5 years, just because of all this increased spending. See, what they don't tell you is, well, in order to pretend we cannot have a tax increase is, well, we're probably not going to make all of our capers pension payments. And we're going to keep taking $300 million away from the highway fund.
Sure.
And by the way, there's not a penny left for any other kind of increase.
Sure.
It's, and where are we going? Everyone around us is moving ahead. We keep falling in a competitive economy. You can fall behind just by standing still. We're not standing still. We're going backwards. Every time we talk about spending and spending and spending, and you need to spend money on services, but you do it like other states that have done it, states that have, New Hampshire, no income tax or a sales tax.
Right.
They run in much more efficient government. They have schools, they have highways, they have social services, they have everything. We have to decide whether we're going to continue down the path and go for the 5th consecutive decade of economic stagnation. Small towns, people are seriously and legitimately worried, what's going to happen to my small town? Wichita might survive.
Sure.
Overland Park might survive. They'll get along.
Sure.
But what's going to happen to the rest of Kansas if we keep going down this path of raising taxes and taking more and more and more money away from people? There's no incentive to come here or stay here.
That's going to be the struggle. Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute. We're out of time, my friend, but it's always a pleasure going into election season. This is the time where it really matters. We appreciate all the information, my friend.
Good to be here, Andy. Thanks.
I always love it.
Thanks for all you do.
Hey, always a good time. 8 minutes to the top of the hour. We got to take a break. Wrapping up hour number 2. Lots more to get to. Plus, Will Carpenter, District number 75, going to join us here in just a bit. This is The Voice of Reason.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. 6 minutes to the top of the hour, making it happen today on a Monday. It's great to have you along. This portion of The Voice of Reason brought to you by the AARP, whether it's the Fraud Watch Network, Retirement Calculator, getting involved, it does not matter. Check them out, aarp.org/KS. For the state of Kansas, Marin Turner back on the line with us. Marin, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Andy. How are you?
I am living the dream. It is the week before election. To me, this is like Super Bowl time with election season, so I'm really pumped up and excited. I can't believe it's finally here.
I'm pumped up, too. I think voting is such an important thing for every American to do. It's really something that, it determines the future, not only for ourselves, but for our families and generations to come. So I hope everyone gets out there and votes.
Absolutely. It's going to be extremely important, especially this year with what's going on. But we've teased about this a little bit on the show. We're actually going to have a guest on it to go a little more in-depth with it tomorrow as well. But for everybody to be aware of, and I'm sure that they're beginning to realize and figure out, but there's some change in some Medicare cards, is there not?
There is. And you're right. We took a survey, and 76% of people don't know that there are going to be some changes in the Medicare card. But as of this year, Medicare has stopped including the Social Security number on the Medicare ID card. And the reason for that is to help protect people against ID theft. Unfortunately, scamsters are finding new ways to defraud Medicare beneficiaries by capitalizing on the card replacement program. And so that's why AARP Kansas is participating in an education campaign to raise awareness among consumers about how to protect themselves from fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here are a couple of ways people are trying to defraud Medicare beneficiaries. Number one, they're posing as Medicare representatives and contacting beneficiaries to demand immediate payment for processing the new card when, in fact, the cards are free. Another way they're doing it is they're saying that the Medicare recipient needs to verify their Social Security number before they can get the new card when Medicare doesn't make calls like that. And then the third way is beneficiaries are told that they're due a refund on the transactions with their old card. And so they need to provide their bank account number so that, these scamsters can process the refund, but that's not true either. And so these are just three of the ways that people need to be aware of fraudsters trying to take advantage of them.
It's really sad that every time we do a change like this, or even just something's going on, that they find an opportunity to try and scam people out of this. I mean, we remember during the IRS and during the tax time that the IRS is calling you and saying that you can't hang up or else we'll send the cops to come and get you. And by the way, you need to be sending money, either wire it to us or you need to send it and put it in the mail and mail us a check, that sort of thing. But you need to do it right away or else we will send the cops and we will come and get you. And it really sounds like it's kind of the same mentality right now with this whole change for Medicare cards.
It really is, and if you're not aware of the new changes, you can become a victim of fraud because some of these scam artists can sound pretty scary. So that's why we're really encouraging people to be aware, to be part of our Fraud Watch Network. We have a free helpline at 877-908-3360. And you can speak to volunteers who can help you with some fraud counseling if you think that you've been defrauded or you have a question.
Absolutely. When are the cards going to start coming out for the replacements?
Well, we're expecting them to come out in August. So people should watch their mailboxes. And if they have any questions, again, feel free. They can log on to our website, www.aarp.org, or call us at 1-866-448-3619. We'd be more than willing to help.
Sure. And it is really important, as you mentioned. I mean, just the understanding of what the change is going to look like, the fact that there is going to be a change, because we need to remind people, too, that if they do get a new card in the mail and they didn't realize that, then it may just be like, oh, this is just a scamster thing, and be too concerned and then just throw it away and actually not get their card replaced. So that could be an issue as well. One more time, Marin Turner with the AARP. If people want to contact you guys, the Fraud Watch Network, have information, how can they reach out to you?
They can reach the Fraud Watch Network at 1-877-908-3360 or call our office at 866-448-3619. We'd love to talk.
I love it. Marin Turner with the AARP. I appreciate it very much. Have a great week. We'll chat with you again next Monday.
Thanks, Andy.
Always a pleasure right there. Wrapping up hour number 2, Will Carpenter, candidate for district number 75 for the State House, coming up hour number 3. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
They understand it's not going to happen right away. They understand, like they did during the FDR times, that you have to do it in a progression. So what do? You overcorrect. You create this movement of fringe socialist ideologues that are very crazy, that are very wild on the fringe. You make them look like crazies, and then you hold up an entire centrist movement, and you end up winning some Democratic seats.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
The day just keeps getting better and better. What do you say? Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number. You get to spend 3 hours a day with me, which I don't know why the heck you would want to do that, but if you do, welcome aboard. We love it and appreciate it very much. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 3, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good morning. Great to have you along today on a Monday morning. That's right, setting the tone not only for today, but for the entire week. It is election week, which means it's my Super Bowl. I'm a dork like that. This is the greatest time of the entire year. Let's get her going.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome in 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. Facebook Live feed is up and rolling, facebook.com/1480KQAM. We are on TuneIn, on the TuneIn app at KQAMradio.com as well. Well, thanks again to Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute, joining us in the last hour as we talked about some of the budgets, the education funding, the tax rates. Could you imagine more money going into the state over the next year or two, another close to $1 billion tax increase, more funding for education that's already 54% of our state budget, money going in left and right all over the place? When does the madness end? And that's the big question. When does the madness end? And elections have consequences. We need to understand these things going into the election for this year. We have opportunity here. I keep saying that this election, this midterm election, is really more important for us at a local level than even the 2016 election of, President Donald Trump and everything that happened there. It was big. Don't get me wrong. That was really big. That was a huge step. Now is the time where we continue moving that agenda. We could go one of two directions here. We could continue to go down the road of increasing spending, increasing taxes, letting the Supreme Court dictate to you, or we can go towards the road of actually changing things a little bit and actually putting our foot down. That's why elections have consequences, and this election is more important than anything else. And talking about it, one of the hotly contested races in the area here for the Wichita area and surrounding areas, district number 75, and Republican candidate is on the line with us here. Mr. Will Carpenter is with us. Will, how are you, my friend?
Good, Andy.
Hey, very good.
Great morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you coming on the show very much so. District number 75, before we get into you and your background and the platform, talk about where is district number 75, and you're the primary challenger. Who is the incumbent in this race?
The incumbent is Mary Martha Good. She defeated me 2 years ago in the primary by 41 votes.
Oh, wow.
We take in, and we call it the northern two-thirds of Butler County, El Dorado, Towanda, Potwin, Elbing, and Cassidy are the towns.
Okay, so you get kind of that area there. 41 votes. That's a hard election. Let's just put it that way.
It was tough.
That's a hard one. We'll talk about your background a little bit. What kind of background do you have? Where are you coming from, and what led you up to wanting to run for this seat?
Well, I was the incumbent for 4 years, and my opponent was just had some pretty liberal views, and so I decided to run against her in this primary. So, but my background, I've been a businessman for 30 years, and I know where the money comes from that pays these taxes and who pays them. And I have 3 children, 4 grandchildren, a wonderful wife that I've been married to for 35 years, and I'm just a common sense conservative guy out here that makes decisions knowing how they affect people.
Mm-hmm. How's the campaign going so far? Going out, talking to the people, knocking on doors. How's the response been?
I think it's been good. You know, my opponent voted to raise $1.2 billion in taxes, and the folks are feeling that effect, the retroactive taxes, and people are feeling that effect.
Sure. That is, a huge aspect to it. I want to get into the tax debate here in just a minute as well, but is that kind of been the topical issue when you go and knock on a door and ask about the issues that they're concerned about? Is it really the tax rates? Is it the economy? Is it education and where the money's going there? What's been the constituents really been focusing on when you go and talk to them?
I think it's the taxes, and not just state taxes, but I'm hearing a huge amount of talk about property taxes, and how high they are, and especially for fixed income seniors and folks that don't have any way of increasing their income to make up that difference. So I think that's a huge concern to folks.
Sure. Well, let's talk about some of this. As you mentioned, last year we did the largest tax increase in state history retroactively. The average individual in the state of Kansas, or the average family household, ended up owing the state of Kansas close to $2,000 to $25,000 or $2,500 as an average earlier this year in April when we filed from last year. Where do we go from here? We are only one of 2 or 3 states in the entire nation with negative GDP growth last year. We need to get the economy back on track, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do it if we continue to have discussions of tax increases, even retroactively.
And I agree 100%. And we live in a very competitive situation here with states even. People don't think about us, but we compete with businesses or with other states for businesses. And when we don't have a competitive tax plan, those businesses are looking elsewhere. And we can do the best job that we can do on educating our kids, but if they can't get a job, find a job when we get through educating them because the business has moved out of state, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. What's the best way to kind of entice them to come to the state? We've talked about how industry struggles to try and come to Kansas. The U-Haul trends year over year in the state of Kansas, we were like number, I want to say 38 in the nation with U-Haul, people using U-Hauls to actually move to the state of Kansas. How do we bring industry to Kansas to be able to grow that economy again?
Well, I think we have to have a competitive tax policy, and that doesn't include raising $1.2 billion worth of taxes. We have to be competitive. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about education for a second. We just talked for the last hour with Dave Trabert, Kansas Policy Institute, and how over the last 20 years or so, since 1996 or 98, that we've increased education funding by close to $3 billion. Graduation and test scores actually went up from 35% to 37%, so a 2% increase in that massive amount of money that we've dumped in there. The Supreme Court coming back and saying, now the formula is somewhat correct now, but now we need to look at inflation, so you need another close to $100 million plus each year to go into education. What's your take on this situation? Do we draw the line? Do we have a constitutional amendment, or do we just go about with what the Supreme Court's been telling us?
Well, I'm in favor of a constitutional amendment and allowing the people to vote on that constitutional amendment, or I'm in favor of the legislature doing a constitutional amendment. We are elected officials. The judges are not elected, and if people don't like what we are doing, then they can get rid of us, which is what happened in the clean sweep in 2 years ago when we elected a bunch of Democrats and liberals and stuff like that, and it cost us $1.5 billion in taxes. And so I'm for turning it back to the people. I'm 100% in favor of a constitutional amendment.
Mm-hmm. What about agriculture? I mean, you live in kind of an agricultural area there. Kansas is so big when it comes to agriculture, and commodity prices down. Farmers have been struggling. Would tax cuts, would that a little bit of relief be able to help out the ag side as well?
No, I think so. It helps some, but we've just got to get our markets going. Nationally, we've got to get some of the stuff done, and we've just got to get our exports markets going. We're just a huge exporter of eggs, and it's very, very important to our county, agricultural-wise. Mm-hmm. And our farmers and ranchers do a great job out there.
Sure. Talking with Will Carpenter, District Number 75, GOP candidate against Mary Martha Good in that race. And as we get closer and closer to this race, there's a lot of issues that pop up, but not only when it comes to tax issues, but some of the social issues as well. The Second Amendment being huge in this state. I know you got endorsed, I believe, by the NRA, correct?
Mm-hmm. And State Rifle
and the KSRA as well. Congratulations on that one. Talk about the importance of the Second Amendment in the state, where else we could go to defend the Second Amendment in the state, and what may pop up in the legislature in the next year or two.
Yeah, you just don't have a crystal ball, but I've always been a solid supporter, a life member of the Rifle Association, and my opponent has an F rating with the NRA, and she voted against she joined the Democrats, and one of 5 Republicans joined the Democrats and voted against every Second Amendment, pro-Second Amendment legislation this whole year. So she just clearly does not have any understanding of the Second Amendment and how important it is to our country.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be, they tried it again last year, but is there any chance of a repealing of a carry on campus that we were actually able to implement as of last year?
I can't see that happening, and it certainly wouldn't have my support.
Sure. Talk about some of the other endorsements you have. You mentioned the NRA and the KSRA, but who else is supporting you in this race?
Kansas for Life. I'm very honored to have that. I've been a supporter of anti-abortion guy for all my life, basically, but for a long time, and it's huge that they supported me, and I'm very honored to have that endorsement by the Kansas for Life, and also the Family Policy Alliance. I've also been endorsed by them, and just means a huge amount to me.
Sure. Well, very good, and congratulations on those as well. If you get this seat and you go up to Topeka, talk about the struggles that you're concerned that may arise, whether it's the makeup of the legislature and trying to actually get something done correctly. Maybe it's whoever sits into the governor's seat at the end of the day. What kind of struggles and debates do you think that you're prepared, or do you think that you may have to face when you get up there?
Well, it's always hard to tell because you never know how things are going to shake out. But I'm ready for any of those, and I'll use my core beliefs to make those decisions and common sense. And depending on how the legislature ends up coming together, I hope to get some work done and get maybe some backing off of the tax plan. But one of the things, too, is I want to work on some performance-based education and taking a hard look at education and what we're getting for our dollars. And this isn't an anti-education deal. It's just a common sense deal that we need to take a look at education and see how we can improve the outcomes. You never hear about that in this debate. You hear about money, 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 but you never hear about how it's affecting the kids. And that's what I want to do, is see how we can performance-base this and get more bang for our dollars.
Sure.
Education dollars.
Absolutely. Will Carpenter, District Number 75, Republican candidate for that seat. We got just a couple of minutes left here, but last message as you go into election week. It's the last week leading up to it. The importance, again, of how important this election is, and just the last little message for the listeners.
Well, there's a clear choice in this deal, probably as clear as any that you'll find. You've got a common sense conservative here, and then you've got a liberal, probably should be a Democrat, quite frankly, but and it's basically up to the voters on which direction they want to go.
Sure. Will Carpenter, if people want to reach out to you and help you out and get more information on you, how can they do so?
You can reach me at 316-541-2932. That's my home phone. You can also reach me at CarpFam, CARPFAM 6965 at sbcglobal.net, and I'm also on Facebook.
Very good. Will Carpenter, appreciate you coming on the show, my friend. Good luck to you in the election.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure right there. Will Carpenter, district number 75 in that seat. We'll take a break. We'll open up lines to you for the last little bit of the show today. It is a monster broadcast Monday, baby. Lots more coming up right here on The Voice of Reason. Stay tuned.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
26 minutes past the hour. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Thanks again to Will Carpenter, district number 75, for coming on. Could you imagine? Could you imagine losing by 41 votes? 41 votes. Again, why every vote matters. Every vote counts. Every vote matters. It's kind of a big deal. That would be devastating to lose by 41 votes. I'm just saying. We have extended. We'll try and get Mary Martha Good on the program as well, since she is the other candidate, obviously, the incumbent and the Republican candidate for district number 75. We'll try and get her on the program, see if we can or not. We are 1 week away from election time, as you know, which means my job makes it all the more fun when we get into this time, because getting you the information. Here's what's going to happen. Over the next week, I'm going to be working on and blasting it out on social media, the list of endorsements that each candidate has received, so that way you're aware. Or what I may do is just the list of from Kansans for Life. Here's the endorsements they made. Here's from the NRA and KSRA. Here's the endorsements they made. So we will get that information out to you. I'll blast it all over social media. That way you know exactly what candidates from what districts that each group or organization actually endorsed when it comes to these races. That way you know. If you use it, awesome. If you don't use it, then that's fine. But if that helps you choose what candidates you're going to support and vote for in the election, then that's what I'm going to do, getting that information out to you. Hey, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but every evening here on KQAM for the next week or so, really week and a half, the NBC baseball tournament, it's happening at Lawrence Dumont Stadium. They have, 4 or 5 games every single day. We're carrying the prime time game of the night at 7 p.m. each and every night right here on KQAM. It's still going strong. We've had a great first weekend to kick that off. It's going to be going through Saturday, August 11th, when the championship happens, and we'll be covering each one of those games for the primetime game of the night at 7 p.m. And it's brought to you right here, by the way, on KQAM by Taco Pronto, Rusty Eck Ford, Just Right Auto Repair, Shire Graphics, Champs Sports Bar and Grill, Fonistock Heating and Cooling, Midwest Kia, Davis Liquor Outlet, Cherry Oaks Golf Course, Team Electric, and Roden Roofing, which, by the way, speaking of, during the NBC baseball tournament, each night at during the 7th inning stretch, during the game, you can listen, be a caller as soon as they give the announcement, and you could win a burger and fry from Champs Sports Bar and Grill. So really cool. It's every single night at 7 p.m. right here on the KQAM airwaves. Depending on whether if it's delayed or if, the game before that went into extra innings, whatever it is. But for the primetime game of the night, we do air that from now until August 11th, which is that Saturday. So we have this week and next week full of baseball every single night right here on KQAM. Not to mention, if you're still into the Wingnuts, Wichita Wingnuts baseball is on our sister station at Sports Radio KGSO 1410 on the AM dial for that one. We'll take a bottom of the hour break. We've got some calls on the line. Don't go anywhere. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. And it is open lines to you for the last little bit of the show. What's on your mind getting into election time? If there's a race or a candidate you're interested in, you want to talk about, mention it to us. We'll get them on the air. We'll have some fun with it. And getting ready for election season, the greatest time of the year, the most patriotic time of the year, and my Super Bowl. That's what we're all about here. This is The Voice of Reason State. And by the way, with our Super Bowl here, we don't kneel for the national anthem. We stand up pridefully during our election time. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Patriotism is alive and well. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome into The Voice Reason, 36 minutes past the hour. Welcome aboard on a Monday morning. Kicking it off the right way, better than we know how to do so, than you know how to do so, than just having more fun every single day. Starting your morning the right way. You can interpret that however you'd like to do so. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK if you want to join into the program as we wrap up this last half hour of The Voice Reason on a Monday. And let's go to the phones line number one. Good morning. What's your name?
Gary.
Hey, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. Are you talking to me? Because I never tell.
Oh, yes, sir. Yep, it's all you.
Okay. On your talk with Will Carpenter, I didn't quite catch it. When you asked him about, I believe, concealed carry, he said he would not support that.
No, he said that he would definitely support concealed carry. He supports. He's been endorsed by the NRA and the Kansas State Rifle Association. He supports the concealed carry on college campuses. He supports concealed carry and constitutional carry. Absolutely. He had mentioned how his opponent did not support. Mary Martha Good, the current incumbent up there, did not support concealed carry and actually voted against some of that stuff. So that was the point that he made. No, he is very much in support of the Second Amendment.
Okay, well, I misheard, and I was kind of scratching my head how he'd get the endorsement and then be against concealed carry on campuses. Maybe that was it.
No, he's very much in support of that. He had made the comment that his opponent was not in support of some of the gun rights activism that we try and fight for in the state, and she's got a bit of a record doing so, which is why she did not receive the NRA endorsement. No, he is very much in support of.
Okay. I wished, basically, I think a fault of all your candidates that you have on there is too genetic. Maybe you have to do that. You can't get into specifics, but it's one nice thing to say we need to get more bang for your buck, but those are, not just, I'm not picking on Will, but it's a lot of them, it's talking points and the devil's in the details. Is okay, how are you going to get more bang for your buck? But anyway, then I'll leave you with this. No one's thinking, and this is on no one's mind but mine, but I would like to ask all the candidates, are they going to get rid of the hypocritical no smoking laws in Kansas, or will they prohibit smoking in their casinos?
Ooh, that's a really good point. No smoking in private businesses, no smoking in restaurants, no smoking. They don't even like you smoking in your home anymore personally, but no smoking in different restaurants or bars or anything like that. No smoking in private clubs like the Elks. But casinos, hey, the casino, it is, it does generate revenue for the state. So you are allowed to sit there and smoke in the casino because we want you to stay in there and spend money, right?
We need the law to apply to everybody.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great point. I'm totally with you on that one. Gary, I love it. Appreciate the phone call very much, my friend. And get ready to go and vote here very soon. That is a really interesting point. I mean, if you're going to pass smoking laws because smoking is really, really, really bad, then why are we still allowed to do that in casinos? It might be because of and look, I mean, I don't care that you smoke at the casino. I actually advocate for the fact of you doing whatever you want to do. And I agree with you being able to have the choice to smoke in a casino if you want to. But that should also go towards the private business having the choice rather than the government telling them how to do so on whether you should be allowed to have a smoking section and you could smoke in the restaurant or the bar, or you don't smoke in the restaurant or the bar. That should be a decision based on the private owner, not based on the government telling you to do so. So that is true. A great point on that one. Let's go back to the phones line at number 2. Good morning. What's your name? Hello.
Hey, you talking to me?
Yes, sir. What's up?
Hey, good morning. It's Deacon again. I wanted to help out the caller who was asking about the concealed carry with Will Carpenter and Mary Martha Good.
Mm-hmm.
Mary Martha Good voted against Kansans who are 18 years old to be able to get a concealed carry permit, but they can enter into a contract and anything else that they want to do as adults, but they can't, get a concealed carry permit. And Will Carpenter supports Kansans who are legal adults being able to get a concealed carry permit.
Sure. No, that's absolutely true. You know what's crazy about this is why is it you're not allowed to buy a gun at 18 years old, but you're allowed to vote, you're allowed to smoke, You're allowed to sign up for college. You're allowed to purchase a car. You're allowed to really be an adult and do everything that you want to do. You're allowed to get married even in most places. You're allowed to do what adults do, but you're not allowed to buy a firearm at 18 years old.
Amen, brother. You're considered an adult with everything except a firearm. That's ridiculous, and it's asinine, and I just don't understand it. If you can be trusted to help decide who's going to run this country, then you should be able to decide whether or not you can carry a gun.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, buy alcohol. I know that they have the alcohol limit to 21 as well, but if you're an adult, then why not lower that to 18?
That's it. Either you're an adult at 18 or you're not.
Sure.
And there's people who say, well, 18-year-olds, you just can't trust them. Well, I don't trust a lot of people who are 60 years old. So,
that's true.
Either you can trust these people or you can't. And if you can't, then, get rid of the voting age for people who are not trustworthy.
Sure. There it is. I love it. Deacon, appreciate it very much, my friend. No, you're right. I mean, we do try to prolong adulthood longer and longer. I mean, now you have to where you can get your insurance through your parents to like the age of 26, and people stay in their homes as long as they can. I get it. I mean, with debt, trying to pay off the debt, and if you're doing it for a good purpose, then all the power to you, or if you need to, but just because you want to and you don't want to move out and start your own life, then you have a bit of a problem. But then we talk about legalizing marijuana. Why are we talking about, for example, and I don't want to get down that road, but we start saying, you know what, we don't want people to smoke cigarettes and we don't want people to smoke in restaurants or smoking whatever, but now we're going to go after vaping, and you're not allowed to vape either, and that's going to be kind of the same thing as the cigarettes because it's tobacco. But then we start advocating for the legalization of marijuana, and I don't know, we're all backwards, and we're all tied up in nice little pretzels on many issues. You're not allowed to purchase a firearm at the age of 18, but you're also allowed to vote, so we can start getting the more progressive activist young adults to go out and actually vote, but you're not allowed to purchase a firearm because, they don't want to purchase a firearm, right? They don't want to. That's being the government and the bureaucrats telling them that they don't want to, not necessarily the students saying that they don't want to. But now they don't want to purchase firearms there. They don't want to have to get firearms at 18 because they're really scared and they're immature. And they just don't have the responsibility. Okay, then why are they voting? Why are they voting? Why are they buying cigarettes? Why are they getting cars and driving? Why are they getting into relationships? They're immature and they haven't learned yet, and they're just not responsible enough yet, according to you, who doesn't want them to purchase a firearm. Then why are they allowed to do all these other things? The things that make you go, What do you say? Let's go back to the phones, line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen.
Good morning, Helen. How are you?
I'm doing just great.
Good.
What makes me furious is that our hypocritical government is trying to say that, we can draft or we can enlist our young 17 and 18-year-olds to learn to shoot guns and go out and fight and risk their lives for our nation. But, no, they can't go out and buy a gun and defend themselves and their families and friends.
Oh, of course not. I mean, you've gone hunting since the age of 6. You use firearms all your entire life. Some and most children have, especially in the state of Kansas here. You've used guns, you've shot them, you grew up on a farm, you went out and you hunted, and you went out and just shot guns, you just had a good time. But no, you can't be buying a gun at the age of 18. But, by the way, we can draft you, we can put a gun in your hand, we can train you how to use it, we can train you responsibility, train you how to be a respectable, responsible adult at 18, 19, 20 years old. But we really shouldn't be allowed to purchase a firearm. Again, the things that make you go, it kind of boggles your mind, doesn't it?
Right. Okay, so if they're going to put up that standard that you can't buy a gun at 17 or 18 when, you can enlist in the military at 17 or 18, then they need to change the military age. In the Bible, you weren't considered an adult until you were 20 years old, so you couldn't enlist, you couldn't go into the military until you were 20 years old. So, okay, let's change that. Let's not allow 17 and 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds into the military until they're 20.
That would be an interesting one, Helen. I appreciate it very much. I agree. We need to set a certain standard on who is going to be considered an adult. And once you're an adult, then it's all fair game. All of it. Guns and liquor and voting and cigarettes and cars and homes and marriage and everything. Just once you hit an age, whatever we set that age to be, 18, 20, 16, whatever it may be, then that's it. You're an adult. All the power to you. I mean, that's what, and by the way, I would go as far as to saying as well that insurance should be that as well. Do a stair step by, a year after you become an actual adult, then you should be having your own insurance. You should be doing your own thing. You should become a little more independent. The option can still be there, but it's not recommended, or it shouldn't be encouraged in any way, shape, or form to not become an adult by the time you hit that age level. And if you don't, and you don't hit a certain threshold of responsibility, then you shouldn't be able to vote either. I'm just saying, I want youth activism. I want kids to be able to vote. And in an election like this, we need the youth to turn out to vote. The predominant number of young children are kind of shifting towards the nice little socialist, left-wing, progressive side of the aisle. I'm not saying all of them are by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of young adults are. And if you're going to vote, then you have to have the responsibility. You cannot vote, in my opinion. You should not be able to vote to tell everybody else that they need their taxes increased, that they need to pay for programs while they are not contributing to it themselves. And that should be a requirement. If you remember back in the day during the revolutionary time, the people that were able to vote were landowners. Why? Because they had property that they paid property taxes on, and if you didn't have property, then you didn't get to vote because you didn't have a say on what the tax rates would be because you weren't contributing the way that they were. I'm not saying that's the right system, but that was the mindset then, and to some degree it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? If you're not contributing and if you're not working, then why would you be voting on people's tax rates to say what kind of programs that you have to pay into? Kind of an interesting thought again, isn't it? The things that make you go, Let's go back to the phone to your line number 4. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, this is Sean.
Sean, good morning, sir. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. We ain't spoken in a while.
I know. It's been a little bit. What have you been up to? You just trying to avoid the show a little bit, have you?
Yeah, well, I've been trying to finalize my plans to dominate the world.
There it is. Well, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, well, you almost stole my thunder because I was going to say, you know what? If the king is going to continue to injure us by taking away our freedoms and not listening to our grievances, then maybe we need to have a little revolution.
See, well, and you know what? I think there is a revolution happening. It's not a physical revolution, but I think there's an ideological revolution happening. The progressives, the far fringe progressives, are thinking that the Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez socialist movement is their revolution. They're trying to hype that up. All they're doing is completely shunning the rest of their base that would actually support somewhat of their agenda, while we're getting upset hearing about these lunatics. We're rising up, and that's why we got a Donald Trump for president. That's why we're seeing conservatives come out in boldness and saying, I am a conservative. I believe in conservative principles, and if you don't like that, then go vote for somebody else. We've become emboldened, and guess what? There are way more of us than there are of them.
Well, I'll tell you this much, my friend. Here's what worries me, and that's the state of Kansas, and I know there's not that many people lives here, and we only got 6 electoral votes, but what I'm worried about is this state going blue, and it doesn't even need a bunch of Californians moving here to do that. Because when you look at, you just said something earlier about another $1 billion tax increase the state's going to hand down to us.
They could try, sure.
Well, yeah, I still believe that's going to happen, but
well, let's hope not. I mean, and that's why how this election is really important. We have the governorship where historically in Kansas, every 8 years it changes parties, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat. We're coming off 8 years of a Republican, and a Republican that overall apparently wasn't the most popular Republican. To where there's a lot of distaste for the Republican Party right now, which means there's a very good chance Democrats could take the governorship, which means that any tax decrease of us trying to kill maybe a sales tax would go vetoed in the governorship, and we wouldn't have enough votes to be able to override that veto. They would advocate for more spending. They would advocate for more taxes. They would advocate for the Supreme Court to do what they've continued to do for so many years. We have candidates in the legislature right now that could potentially be more conservative, but also could potentially be more so on the moderate side. We have U.S. congressional seats like the one up with Lynn Jenkins that's open, where we have 7 Republicans that are beating each other up pretty bad. 1 Democrat that's being rallied around behind with Paul Davis. We have the seat with Kevin Yoder that's very concerning about his seat. They could potentially turn 1 or 2 of those national seats, some of the state legislature, and even the governorship to a blue seat and turn them Democrat. And if they do, then you're right, this state could go in a very different direction than what we'd like to see.
Well, I've always disagreed with somebody saying that Kansas is a red state. I mean, if you know the history of this state, and I know you grew up next door in Colorado, but yeah, this state's been voting for a Republican president, I think, since the end of Roosevelt's first term or whatever, and the same with been voting for Republican senators since the 1930s. But we always go back and forth between a Democrat and a Republican governor, and we even do the same thing here in Wichita.
Sure.
And I just don't think there's enough conservatives in this state that I don't know. I mean, I don't think conservatives have the numbers anywhere. And being conservative, by the way, doesn't make you a far right radical or extremist or somebody that, all being a conservative means just exercising common sense.
Exactly.
That's what conservatism is to me.
Amen to that one.
And you see the difference between conservative Republicans and moderate Republicans. It's almost like night and day.
Sure.
Because it was the moderate Republicans who have the majority up there in Topeka, and they gave the Democrats, they worked with the Democrats to give us the largest state income tax increase in history.
Exactly.
That's going to make people mad. They're probably going to vote Democrat come this November, at least for the state, for the governorship and the legislature. And I hope it doesn't, that everybody goes for, Republicans and who's up besides the House, who's up in the Senate this time around?
This time around, no, unless there's a seat that's actually been stepped aside and it's an open seat or something. There's no election for the Senate to this year, so that's the next election cycle.
Well, let's just hope that everybody votes at least in the up there in D.C. for all Republican representatives.
Well, we can only hope. We can only hope. Sean,
okay.
It's absolutely, my friend. It's good to talk to you again. It's been a little bit. I appreciate the phone call very much. So we got to take a break. We got some other calls on the line. Stay there. We'll try and sneak you in as soon as we come back. 7 minutes at the top of the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Minutes left into the program as we head to the top of the hour. Wrap up the program today. Mike Gallagher right around the corner right here on the KQAM airwaves. But until then, let's sneak in one more phone call as we wrap up the show today on a Monday. Good morning. What's your name?
Representative Carpenter.
Representative Blake Carpenter. What's happening, sir?
Hey, I was just calling in to talk to you a little bit about what you guys were talking about earlier as far as firearms and the youth. Not many people know this, but our youth can actually purchase firearms at a private sale, or they can have them gifted to them at 18, 19, or 20 as far as a handgun goes. They just can't buy them from a federally licensed firearms dealer or an FFL dealer. And so also in the state of Kansas, 18, 19, and 20-year-olds can also currently open carry a firearm, but they cannot conceal and carry a firearm.
Absolutely. That's a really great point, and I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, I know a lot of people that they do get the gift of a firearm from their parents or grandparents or somebody. You can get the gift, you just can't purchase it yourself, which is, I mean, isn't that crazy? You can still get the gun, but we're going to have a law there to tell you can't purchase the gun because we're going to try and keep the gun out of your hand. But at the same time, you can go and you can constitutionally carry an open carry or concealed carry in the state as long as, you do it the right way. You just can't go out and actually physically purchase the gun.
Well, constitutional carry is 21 and up, and so is the concealed carry license currently. But that's something that's definitely going to come back up this next legislative session, which is going to be changing that concealed carry age with the license.
Do you think that we have a chance to be able to fix that a little bit?
I think so. If we have the right people in the right spots, we can make it happen.
Making it happen. I love it. State Representative Blake Carpenter. By the way, got to see you guys out at the Kansans for Life event yesterday. That was a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys out there. That looked like it was a really great event.
Yep, great. Thanks, Andy.
Good stuff. Blake Carpenter there. Appreciate the phone call right there. There you go, getting the update from the elected officials themselves. That's it for today. Appreciate all the phone calls, conversations. We love it. We'll be back at it tomorrow on a Tuesday. This is The Voice of Reason. Have a great day, everybody.